Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeice. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well-Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeice in the studio with Curt Stockwell, Well-Dressed Walrus, and we have been and are talking about the human side of marketing.
That's correct.
But this is part 3.
This is part 3, and it's actually part 1 of a 7-part framework that we're going to talk about on how to get even more clarity in your marketing.
Well, and that is what you've done a good job of historically, Curt, and in segment 1, 2, and 3 is this overriding premise of clarifying the theme.
Right.
Clarifying what your brand is.
Right.
So today, in terms of the human side of marketing, what are we going to attack?
Basically, what we're going to look at is the most important piece of your marketing is connecting with your customer. What does your customer value? Many times when we work with businesses or organizations, they have a kind of an idea of what their customer values, but sometimes it can be clouded by the fact that they're more interested in the product that they're offering and the kind of the different things that the product doesn't do. You know, as business owners, we get so caught up in our product, we get so caught up in our own abilities as we're presenting the product or delivering the product or physically interacting with the product for our customer, that we never really take the time to think, what value does my customer see in my offering, right? Because what people are looking for is they're looking for the value that they can get out of whatever you're offering.
Is it a bit of that forest for the trees concept that the one actually producing the product is so knee deep, if you will, in terms of the attributes of this and what it does in design that they forget the actual end user? How do they perceive it?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when I talk to businesses, I say, it's so easy to do have shop talk in your marketing, or speak over people's heads, or use jargon that people don't understand, and 95% of the time, probably 99% of the time, across the table, the person that I'm talking to or consulting with are nodding their head. They're like, sometimes I don't even know how to talk about my product in a way that that the average person can understand. You hear this often when people say, well, what do you do? And if your reply is, well, it's complicated, then you're not starting off on a good footing.
If you don't know your own ability to clarify what you do. Right.
So the key to marketing is telling a story that your customers can be invited into. Now, we don't want to tell the story of who you are and why you're so great. We want to tell the story of how your product fits into your customer's story. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about part 1 of 7 elements that you need to tell the story of your product offering.
Well, let's dive in. Let's dive in and understand how you clarify within that 7-part framework. How do we do that? How do we accomplish that?
So the goal in this 7 parts, and I hope that you'll tune in to get all 7, because it's really important that you understand every aspect of it, is when you clarify your message to create better marketing collateral, it's going to increase revenue, and it's going to decrease stress.
Yep.
So when we are confident in how we're talking about our products or services, it really does decrease stress. You know that you're putting your best foot forward in explaining what you do to that potential customer. And we're in such a noisy marketplace. I've said this both times that we've met. We're in such a noisy marketplace that the business with the clearest message will win. That has been proven over and over.
And we've thrown out a couple, even off camera, we've talked about a couple, whether it be in the political realm, manufacturing realm, service realm, and without going into any of those respective examples, sometimes you can have a product, if you will, that has all the gadgets and all the solutions, and rather there's a simplified, streamlined product over here that wins.
Right.
And you're thinking, how is that possible?
Yeah, if I've always when I speak to large groups, I always kind of give the example of, let's say some of you are in some sort of kind of a niche hobby or a niche market or you're really into woodworking or something like that, the best tool to use or the best equipment, if you're into some maybe outdoor sports or something like that. And when this piece of equipment or this tool or whatever that most people buy is, you notice that and you're just cringing because you're like, ugh, that's not even the best thing out there. But the reason that people are buying it is because it's the most clear. It's the most easy to understand.
It was branded correctly.
Right. It was branded correctly. Yeah.
And you or I mean, that's a great example because you end up walking into Home Depot or Lowe's or Peter's Hardware or what have you, and you're right. You go right down the aisle and I'm looking for such and such that you might have seen on this old house, or it was branded or positioned.
Yeah, it was positioned well. I get it. I understand it. So I'm making the purchase.
Yep.
It might not even be necessarily the best product,
but I'm comfortable with it.
But I'm comfortable with it because I understand it, because it had clarity and I see value. So we always
that's a great point though that you just said, that you're comfortable with it. I'm sure you see this in the eyes of the folks that are across the desk from you, and I see it in the legal industry as well, that you might feel good about some complex language of describing something, but if they're uncomfortable, as you described, with that advice or counsel, and they can't wrap their hands around it, then you've failed.
Right.
You failed. But if you have delivered that, whether it's a medical doctor or a lawyer or what have you, if you can deliver it in some sort of fashion that is, as you said, comfortable with it, actionable.
Right.
That, I think it's that counsel, if you will, that would win.
Right, exactly. So one thing that we always tell our customers is you need the 3 C's of marketing. I think we've talked about this before as well. But you need clarity, you need content, and you need consistency. So what we want to do in this 7-part series, and again, starting with step 1, which is understanding your customer, that's bringing clarity before you go write content, before you're writing a blog post, or before you're putting a sales letter out there, before you're doing anything in print and digital. You need to find clarity and then create that content and then be consistent with this. So research has shown over the many years of that we humans have been marketing to one another, that story has a big impact in marketing.
Absolutely.
And really, what I get where I get the most feedback from customers is the ease of the process of using this formula that we're going to talk about to make marketing easy. So when you invite customers into a story, and we're going to invite customers into a story, and it's a formula. And it's a narrative of a formula is native to how we think. So when I want to create something, I want to look at the rules that I need to follow to create it. Now, there's different aspects of very creative kind of rogue people out there, but the majority of us want to know, what are the rules I need to follow to be a success?
What's the roadmap to write a screenplay? What's the roadmap, the trajectory of a story, that introducing characters, the problem, the solution,
exactly.
A roadmap.
Yeah, and so of the people who are listening, if you only want to sell on price, if that's the only competitive platform you want to live on is just price, then you probably don't need to listen.
Right.
But if you want to sell on value, if you want people to understand the value of what you offer, then this is for
relationship.
Yeah, this is for you. So what we do is we initially understand who is our customer, and in the story, that's the character. That's the main character. And we want to understand who's the main character of the story. And then some of the other elements we're going to get into is that character has a problem and is looking for a guide. Okay, so we, as the presenter of this tool or this solution, we're the guide. We're not the hero. We're not the main character. We're the guide. And we want to focus on, what does our customer see as valuable. There's actually a really neat, it's called the Bain Elements of Value Pyramid. If you just literally Google searched Elements of Value Pyramid, it's put together by a company called Bain Company, and it's 30 values that has been studied over the last 30, 40 years of why people buy, why people engage and buy products.
The laws of human nature.
Yeah, it's human nature. Yeah, and so the elements of this value pyramid, and I would encourage anybody who wants to know better about what their customer is really looking for, go check out and Google search the elements of value pyramid, and you'll see that they're broken down into 4 different parts. One of them is functional. So there's one of those, the base of that element is it needs to be functional. One of the elements of functional is saves time. So you can kind of go through this pyramid and go, yep, my product helps people save time. And so that way you're not speaking to your customer in some sort of shop talk or jargon about saving time. Just say the word, it saves time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simple.
Simply put.
It's so simple when you think about it. You don't need to use jargon. When somebody, all they want to know is, will this save me time?
Yeah.
If this will save me time, I'm interested.
Yep, I'm in. I'll take it.
I'm in. So go through this. And the next level is emotional. So maybe there's something nostalgic about what your product or your service offers. So circle that. The next element, and as this, as the pyramid gets closer to the top, there's fewer and fewer things that people are actually really looking for in these different categories. So the next one is life-changing. So maybe this life-changing aspect is your product or service provides hope. Again, this is just one of the things in each one of these sections.
And that nostalgic and hope is an interesting one because I could see those being very correlated, actually.
Exactly. And then literally the top of this pyramid is self-transcendence. That's the only thing sitting up there, because really what your customer's looking for is to go from one place to another place. Really, so I'm looking to go. You just went on vacation to Hawaii, and if you were working with a travel agent, and that travel agent was.
Thanks for ratting me out, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Ryan was just in Hawaii. We're all in the snow. So
I'm back in the snow.
Right.
Okay.
So if a travel agency was advertising to you, really, what are you looking for? You're looking for an escape from the cold,
right?
To a warm location. Or to a warm place. Or, maybe if, for my company, for example, what we say is you'll go from confusion to clarity in your marketing. So that last piece of it, that top of the pyramid, is really the transformational identity that your customer is ultimately looking for.
Because I want that. I want clarity. I want to take whether it's a product or a service, and it is complex, right? But if you can bring them from a position of confusion or complexity, if you will, to clarity,
and that's really it. If you can look at who your character is and ultimately break it down to what they want, use this pyramid. Again, Google search that. You'll find multiple iterations of the pyramid in a visual form, and just go circle those simple terms. I'm convinced that the way to stand out in marketing in 2019 is to use simple, clear words.
I agree.
Ditch the jargon.
I agree.
Because your competitors
There's too much noise.
There's too much
noise. It's just like you almost, I think, I'm literally throwing up my hands because I think that's what you do mentally. Too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
Be simple.
I just want to see. You've probably, again, that example of products that people buy that aren't necessarily the best. And whenever you're asking the person, well, why did you buy this? I don't know. It was the easiest to understand, or it was the right price, or it was the instructions were really simple when I read it because they were really spoken in terms that I could understand.
Curt, I think there's so much to be said for that. I even went overboard one direction, and we joke about it in my own family. My Jeep Wrangler 2011 doesn't have electric windows, doesn't have electric locks, and you'd say, why on earth? I've even had my kids' friends like,
how do I roll down the window?
No, literally, is there a car what is this? But to an extreme, it's actually what you're talking about. Just functional and simple.
Yeah.
And again, extreme.
Yeah.
But it's your point.
It's functional and it's simple. Yeah. I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm
good.
I understand.
Got enough other things that have complexities to it. I don't need my.
Right. So really break down, what does your customer want?
Yeah.
And make it simple. Use that pyramid to circle those words and be diligent to not stray into really fringy things that your customer might want. One way to kind of break it down into, we hear this from time to time, our offerings, we have a lot of different things that we offer, and we have customers that buy lots of different things. Maybe initially focus on your highest revenue stream, the thing that makes you the most money, and focus on that customer initially. Because you can do this process, this 7-part framework that we're gonna break down. You can do that for all different types of customers that you serve. But ultimately, there's probably one main customer that is your biggest revenue, driver that you need to make sure to focus on.
And Curt, maybe a point you're making there too is of the 7, you can't necessarily bite it all off at the same time. That you got to focus on that one.
Well, yeah, that customer.
Right.
Yeah, that customer. The 7 parts of the framework. You will want to go through this for every different type of customer that you have.
Right.
But again, I would say that most businesses and organizations, even if you do have multiple things that you offer, there's probably one main cohesive message that most people will understand. The majority of your customers will understand. Focus on that one first. Find clarity in that one first. And it goes really to the elements of a good story. If for example, Jason Bourne movies, right? If we know that Jason Bourne wants to find out who he is, and at the end of the whole journey, he just wants to understand who he is and what his past is all about. That's it. That's really all, and we're engaged, right?
Yep. And then he works his way through the storyline.
Yes, and then he works his way through the storyline. If Jason Bourne in this story, he was in Germany, and he's fighting the bad guy, and he's in this major German city, and he's also thinking, I kind of like it here. I want to. I think I might look for an apartment, and in this apartment, I want to also, maybe I'll buy a cat.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at real estate. I want to figure out who the bad guy is. I'm interested in adopting a pet.
Want to know my past.
Yeah, and I also want to know we've all heard seen these stories that we can't follow because we can't really understand what's the main thing that the character wants.
Where are we going from A to B?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of an extreme example. But really, when you think about it, if you can't clearly define what your customer wants or what value they're really looking for, then it's going to be noisy.
But Curt, I feel like you always hit the nail on the head because it's kind of a convicting type comment because, again, whether you're service or manufacturing, but my background is primarily professional services, and any professional service, you are offering a lot of different things, but there's no way to wrap it up into one bow. And so I think you have to go away from, like you said, we do this, we do that. It's got to be more of an overview of what problem do they want solved, rather than a list of 1,000 things,
right?
Which is complex. It's harder to do.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's not as easy as said. But let's take a short break and come right back and talk about this clarification of the message and understanding what the customer actually does want. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Curt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
I'm Jade Becker, and I'm a senior at Chewelah High School. I'm at STCU's Money Live event. In this scenario that we played today, I was a realtor. My spouse was a city worker. We had an 11-month-old child, and there was a lot of spending for that child, like diapers and formula, and had to buy toys and clothing. I'm very glad that I had this experience. It was super helpful. You need this to get far and ahead in life. I'm Jade Becker, and STCU is here for good.
The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeice Wheeler Attorneys. McNeice Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeice Wheeler Attorneys.
Welcome back to Business Talks. Ryan McNeice in the studio with Curt Stockwell, Well Dressed Walrus, talking about the human side of marketing. And right before the break, we were unpacking what the customer actually wants. versus oftentimes what the person doing the marketing thinks they want, and it's not usually as simple as it sounds. And I didn't mention this in the opening, but rather you can find out more on each of these topics at Human Side of Marketing podcast at Well Dressed Walrus. How else can someone find additional info?
On iTunes, you can just search WD Walrus, which is the name of my company, by the way. My nickname's not the Well Dressed Walrus.
Yeah, it's a great name. We've always said it's a great name.
So you can go on iTunes or Stitcher and search the Human Side of Marketing.
Okay.
And we're breaking down this topic and a ton of other topics related to clarity in your marketing.
And that was going to be my point, that we've done part 1, part 2, and part 3 today here on Business Talks that you can find at SpokaneTalksMedia.com. But that's why I wanted to reference there's more in-depth on each of these respective marketing topics on Curt at Well Dressed Walrus own podcast.
And you can also go to our website at welldressedwalrus.com. Scroll all the way to the footer, and you'll see these podcasts on there.
And you've been doing those yourself as well as with Chris Angel?
That's right.
He doesn't do each of them, though, with you?
Yeah, actually he does. We do a kind of a conversation. It's kind of nice. It's just like this. It's a conversation.
But this is
that
much
we're
better,
having.
right?
It's right.
No,
yeah, by far.
Right. Oh,
it's a conversation style.
Right.
So it's easy to listen to.
Well, and in all seriousness, flesh out the critical issues of marketing.
Right.
It's complex. People often hear, hey, are you advertising? But advertising and marketing are two different things entirely. But we could go down that path. Mm-hmm. But in terms of unpacking what the customer actually wants, not what I think my customer wants, but how do you unpack that? How do you get to that kind of golden nugget of what the customer actually wants? How do you go through that process?
So we really start to, when we come in to work with a business or organization, we start just asking questions, and we do a really good job of, and I actually preface this. I was just meeting with a company yesterday, and I said, okay, you've hired me to ask dumb questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're like, you're paying for this.
These are the dumb questions, not really dumb questions, but that your customers are either thinking or actually asking.
Right.
The thing with confusing marketing or having a message that's confusing is you could alienate somebody without even knowing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, none of us wants to be embarrassed, or none of us wants to ask a dumb question about something that we should know. A lot of times the buzzwords that we use in our marketing are words that are out there in the kind of marketing, social media, the space of whatever kind of vertical that you're speaking to. There you go. A word like vertical.
What does that mean?
So they're buzzwords that are out there that you think people understand, but they really don't.
Well, because they are industry specific.
Industry specific.
Right.
Yep. And people are like, I've heard the term SEO, but I don't know that means search engine optimization. Right. Or I've heard the word search engine optimization, but I don't really know what that means.
Yeah. What does that entail?
Yeah. And so, when we are doing our own marketing, rather than saying, greater SEO as kind of a pitch or a value add, we would say, get seen by more people.
Yeah. You're like, my gosh, why didn't you just say that?
Exactly.
And I actually oftentimes bring up the human nature psychological concept that the Bible in itself was told in parables.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because as you just described,
story.
The people could understand the story.
Right.
And oftentimes in that time period, folks were by and large as a high percentage illiterate.
Yeah.
So they had to learn via story. And anyway,
that's
I
why
find that interesting.
This again, we're talking about step 1 in a 7-piece formula for creating good story to unpack your marketing in a way that people can easily consume it. And step 1 of this, as we've been discussing, is the character. If I can immediately identify that, hey, that is speaking to me because I want the things that are being spoken of in that marketing messaging. And we talked about the fact that you really need to find what are your customers ultimately valuing,
right?
And so I gave the example, maybe I think it was last time, of a lawn company makes your lawn green, makes your lawn healthy, and can use all these different types of formulas or the way they cut the grass or whatever. But ultimately, they give you a green lawn, a healthy lawn. But really, what are you buying? You're not necessarily buying a healthy lawn. You're buying pride in your home.
Yep.
You've
made my life easier.
And you've made my life. You're buying time.
Absolutely.
You're saving time. And in that pyramid that I was discussing before the break, that's one of those things in there. So what you will not find if you're a lawn care company, you're looking at that pyramid, you're not going to find the word green lawn. Right?
We'll give you a green lawn.
That's not really what people are looking for. They're looking for other value. They're looking for saves time. They're looking for pride. They're looking for simple. Those kind of things. Use those words in your marketing. We were just working with a customer, a potential customer the other day, kind of unpacking how we do what we do when it comes to helping businesses clarify their message. And we told them we're going to challenge you not to use industry jargon. And he literally said,
it would be hard.
He literally said, well, I like using industry jargon because it makes me sound smarter.
Yeah, but that's not your customer necessarily. That is.
But you're reaching out to the general public.
Yep.
And this individual actually was reaching out to the general public. And I'm like, you will separate yourself from your competition if you actually make it more simple.
Well, and I want to circle back from a kind of self-deprecating standpoint. We all, in our respective fields, could use industry language, but pull me out of my respective expertise, and I don't know the industry language. So when you said earlier and prefaced it with there isn't a dumb question per se, we all aren't experts in everything.
Right.
And so I think that goes to your whole point today, though, that you need to get in the shoes of your customer that isn't in your field. Because you know what? We're that person when we're working with a different vendor. We're not the expert in the field.
And I would say too that if you're worried about sounding intelligent, but you're not being smart in your marketing, you actually are going to lose.
It's going to be worse.
Yeah, it's going to be worse. Yep. Yep. Because ultimately, I want to know that you understand me and you've got empathy for me. One of the things that ultimately I'm looking for from you as I'm purchasing your product is that you understand me, you have empathy. And so one of the things that you can do right out of the gate is use words I understand. And in a way that's either conscious or unconscious, I'm recognizing, I'm connecting with you because it's clear.
And that, I think, is what you're saying, kind of embodies or creates that initial engagement.
So take the time to really understand your customer and the words that you use to speak to your customer or potential customer. When people say, oh yeah, we know who our customer is, they want a green lawn. I would challenge and say, I don't think you really do know what your customers want. They really don't want a green lawn. They do want a green lawn ultimately, but internally they want peace of mind. They want to save time. They want a better relationship with their spouse. I want pride in my home. My boss is coming at the end of the summer for a barbecue, and I want to, and like I said, have pride in my home when he drives up and sees, how nice my home looks, and all of those things. That's really what people are buying.
Yeah, I think that insight is, again, it's spot on, but it's never easy.
No, it's not easy.
Because when you start delving into, again, can you not see the forest for the trees when you're dealing with your own respective industry? Sometimes you can't think outside the box and understand what that.
It's not easy, and so we are a website design company. We're also a marketing company, and just since I've been kind of preaching this message of finding clarity in your marketing, I'm getting more and more people bringing me in to do consulting. They have their own web development team. They have their own marketing team. They have all the people that can actually create the assets, but we're getting brought in because we're an outside ear that we do not have the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge
I agree with that, actually.
Is, I can't really write my marketing well because I understand my product too much.
But we've talked about this in the past, that Curt, compliments to you and Andy at Well Dressed Walrus, but the yin and yang, if you will, you have the technical that they might already have in different resources, but what you guys also bring to the table is that consulting, that psychology. I'll call it the psychology of the human nature, that you need to weave the technology and the psychology
We are
together.
a little different than other marketing companies in the sense that we can do the messaging, but we can also build the asset as well, build the website or whatever digital asset
I think as we've talked, Curt, in segment 1, 2, and 3 on the human side of marketing, it's a complex issue. It's ongoing, and we're going to continue this series with Curt. And on that note, the next time we sit down, what do we want to tackle in the next segment?
So the next time we sit down, we're going to talk about step 2 of this 7-part framework, and that is the problem. So your customer or your hero Again, we're telling a story here. We're unpacking a story. Your customer's the hero. We now understand what they want. Jason Bourne wants to find out who he is, right? Or your customer wants to find peace of mind. Ultimately, when you've gone through that pyramid, you've realized really what they're looking for is peace of mind, let's say.
Right.
And we're going to start unpacking the problem.
As to how we get there.
The problem that your customer really is having. So your customer has a problem. What's that problem? If you can clearly, through the words in your marketing or the words that you're saying about your product or service, say, hey, I recognize you have a problem and it makes you feel this way. So the problem, there's three pieces. There's the external, there's the internal, and then there's the philosophical. The external problem is my lawn's brown. Mm-hmm. The internal problem is it makes me feel like I'm not doing a good job of taking care of my family. Or my wife's on my case to get the brown lawn green again. And so it's causing problems in my marriage. Mm-hmm. Really, you start digging into really what your product is doing. It's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, the complexity of what the result actually can be.
It makes it very human when you realize that, with what we do when we are producing marketing material for customers, it does, like I mentioned before, it does increase revenue. Yeah, I want to increase revenue, but it decreases stress. I'm not stressed out that my website is this scourge of the internet that I don't want anybody to look at. I mean, we've talked to people many times. They're like, "Oh, I'd love for you to help me with my website." I'm like, "Oh, well, what's the web address?" "Oh, no, I don't even want you to look at it."
Yeah, don't even look.
Don't even look at it. And there's people out there probably listening that go, "Oh, yeah, that's my website." So literally, we're producing a website, but we're reducing stress.
Yep.
We're helping with that peace of mind. Pride, brand pride, is something that we're actually delivering. So we're the external problem is my website sucks. The internal problem is it makes me have certain feelings that are that I don't like.
Yeah, inadequacy.
I want it fixed.
So in essence, you got step one. That's, hey, we know where the goal. Jason Bourne's trying to figure out his background, but what is the problem that Jason Bourne is running into?
And so you unpack that if you think about any great movie, you quickly recognize what the hero wants, and then immediately you understand the problems that they're facing,
the challenges that they're facing, and then typically they'll meet. And this is the third part of the piece. They're going to meet a guide. So that's us. That's us. That's you. You're selling your product. You're the guide to lead them across the bridge to resolving the problem.
Exactly.
Which is what I love about obviously what we get a chance to do here, but overall in the marketing process is the story.
Yeah.
And the trajectory of the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the time we have for today. But again, if you want to find out more information on part one with Well-Dressed Walrus and Curt Stockwell, you can go to SpokaneTalksMedia.com, part 1, part 2, part 3, also your podcast, Well-Dressed Walrus, on iTunes. Thank you for joining us on Business Talks this week. We'll see you next time.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well-Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.